What an honor to have here at our congregation President of the Union for Reformed Judaism, man of leadership and compassion and wisdom, and he is my very good friend, Rabbi Rick Jacobs.
I'll get to you in just a moment.
We have almost 900 congregations in the Union for Reformed Judaism. There are a lot of congregations spread out all over North America, and they all have something that makes them special. And I love all of them. But can I just tell you that being here tonight, there is something so alive in this community. Something so filled with life and vitality and strength. I love them all, but tonight, TBA is a shining light. What a congregation could be. You didn't just come to be like that. It's 50 years. Right? You've got a lot of leadership and hurdles to overcome, and I'm looking out at my colleague, Rabbi Miller. Bob, you literally led this incredible congregation for over half its life. It's not easy to lead the Jewish people. Do you know that? They sometimes are a bit challenging, but you don't get to be 50 without a lot of really hard work and inspired leadership and a lot of wisdom. So, Bob, I hope that this weekend especially is a weekend for you to feel a great sense of fulfillment. What you helped birth and what has continued in the way in which you have led. Turn to my colleague, Rabbi Lisa Idison. You are filled with such a gift of learning and warmth. I can imagine a lot of those kids who are trying to escape. Stay close. And the gifts that you have brought, and the leadership that you have exercised, and the Torah that you have sown into the hearts, minds, not just of the young ones, but of the whole congregation, is truly a gift from God. And then there is your rabbi of 17 years, Rabbi Keith Stern. When he started talking about these stories, I thought, Keith, you're going first. I get to go second. Be careful. And there is not enough time in this evening for all the stories that could be told, to be told. But your rabbi is one of the extraordinary people that I know, and one of the most inspiring individuals. And yes, he didn't dive into prayer in the first year of school, but he leads prayer with such depth. Now, I imagine when the creator of the universe was trying to come up with all the stuff that would go inside of Keith Stern, that the creator took a little bit of Yehuda Amichai, the great Hebrew poet, took a little bit of Mario Batali, because this man just loves to cook. And you know what? That's fine with me. I get such joy in cooking for others and nourishing other people. But there's also a measure of John Coltrane. God had to put a little bit of that because there's something about jazz in this man's soul. And then, of course, he's got that gift of counseling, understanding, and empathy. So throw in a little Carl Jung, maybe, just to kind of add it. And maybe you got to put in a little bit Barry White. And if you don't know who Barry White is, when you go home tonight, you'll look up Barry White. There's plenty of Barry White in this. And God somehow put this whole human being together and poof, he came into our world. And I know Keith Stern is one of the great blessings in my life, one of the rabbis that I would turn to on any day to learn his Torah, to be inspired by his incredible gifts. And so you come to your 50 years honestly with hard work and leadership and vision. And you could just say, let's just feel good this weekend. And you know what? You deserve to feel good. But let's use this moment of 50 to reflect on not just where you are and how far you've come and the strength of today, Let's use this moment to think about not just the next 5 or 10. Let's imagine together where we as a movement could be going. So in the 10th chapter of the book of Leviticus, in this Parashah Shmini, is a description of one of the most painful narratives in all the Hebrew Bible. It's one of those narratives that just scares young rabbis to be, young cantors. It's a story about 2 sons of Aaron, Nadav and Avihu. The first day on the job, they somehow get off track. They've been given all the rules, all the things to do, and then the text tells us they did something that was not commanded. They offered an Eish Zara, an alien or strange fire, in their ritual expression, and they were in an instant consumed in fire. Now, if you tell that story to graduating rabbinical and cantorial school students, basically you're telling them, don't get out of line. Because if you go off the rails, you too, like Nadav and Avihu, you may find yourself no longer on this earth. This is one of the most powerful stories about tradition and innovation. Telling us, be careful, you innovators, because if you go too far, you will lose your way. In the 19th century, one of the greatest modern Orthodox rabbis, Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, read this story and the death of these 2 innovators, and he said, do you know who Nadav and Avihu are? They are the first Reform rabbis. And he didn't say it out of admiration or love. He said it as a warning that the Reform movement, particularly the Germany of his leadership, were innovating in ways that he thought were inappropriate, and he was hoping to some degree that what happened to Nadav and Avihu would happen to all of us. It is a danger to innovate too much, but the story, I believe, is here to tell us it's dangerous not to innovate. And that's not just a Reform teaching, that's a Jewish teaching. Our tradition is alive because we've had innovators. Ellen, when you told us a story about that little blue book at Temple Israel in Memphis, that's the blue book that was an innovation in itself. The rabbis who wrote and edited the Union Prayer Book, they broke all the rules and made this incredibly innovative prayer book. And then there were people who said, we're going to keep that prayer book and never change it. And they weren't being true to the Reformed Judaism that we know. So we're here tonight because of innovators and because we love the tradition, and we stay as best we can in that balance. And we will always stay in that balance. When we get a little too set in our ways, get a little innovative spirit, there's another way. There's perhaps a more perfect and compelling way for us to do our sacred work. Does anybody remember Blockbuster? When I would remember, my kids would say, we want to watch a movie this weekend. Can you take us to Blockbuster? Noah, do you remember Blockbuster? Yeah, what was Blockbuster? It was the movie store. And you would go to the movie store because they rented things that I think some kids may not even know about. VHS video, right? And I know that when I used to get to Blockbuster, they never had the good movies. Because you already took it out. And then if you brought your movie back a couple of days late, what happened? They charged you. And what happened if you forgot to rewind it? They charged you more. So this was a perfect thing. You had to schlep down a Blockbuster, get a movie that you didn't want, bring it back a couple of days late, get charged extra, and then say, well, maybe next week we won't get lucky. There are no more Blockbuster stores around, right? I still have my card at the counter. Mine's in Hebrew because it's from the Blockbuster in Jerusalem. And now we don't have any more movies, right? We don't get to watch movies. Did someone figure out a better way for us to watch movies than to go through this routine? Yeah. How do we watch movies today? Netflix. So we have a way just to stay at home, find the movie we want, see it. There's a financial way that they do it. They come out ahead. We do okay. We still love movies, even though there's a new way to do it. We, friends, cannot be the blockbusters of the Jewish world. Rabbi David Levin is part of our URJ team. It is an honor to serve with you, David. David is part of the network of our URJ professionals who connect us synagogue to synagogue and all across the union, help us to be innovators so that we don't become the blockbuster of the Jewish world. Because we love movies, right? We love Torah, but we can't get held up in the way in which we come to experience it. We've got to be focused on the Ikar. So I was in a hurry. Do people in Boston ever find themselves in a hurry? Do you find yourself in a hurry? Yeah. All right, it's not a New York thing, although maybe we have it a little bit more abundance than us. So I was in a hurry. I was going downtown on Broadway, and I found myself literally looking at my watch and looking at the street and realized I'm going to be late, even if I broke into an outright run. So I kind of started to jog a little bit, and I'm moving pretty good. There's an African-American man on my right. There's a Latina woman on my left. I don't know them, but they are in a hurry too. We're all hustling down Broadway, and we're all going to get to where we're going to go, and all of a sudden I see them. There they are. They're blocking the street. How could that be? My luck. There they are. Who are they? Chabad has parked the mitzvah tank across Broadway. And I am in a hurry. This is not going to work out. So I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to duck around and avoid the mitzvah tank. I said, no, don't do that. You're a Jewish leader. Just keep going. And I'm moving down with my two companions that I don't know. And all of a sudden, the Chabad rabbi turns and looks at the three of us and says, only to me, excuse me, are you Jewish? And I said, yes. Are you? This man started to point. No words, he's pointing. He pointed to his black fedora. He pointed to his tzitzit, to his black coat. He just kept pointing. He couldn't speak. And I said, appearances are not always reality. And I kept walking. Can I tell you, he's still standing. This was months ago. He's still standing in that spot. Now, why do I tell you that story? It is not because I have anything less than love and high respect for Chabad. In fact, I had the privilege of meeting the lead rabbi of Chabad, Rabbi Avodah. We've actually come to, I believe, have a friendship and a relationship I hope that will strengthen Jewish people. I tell you that story because that rabbi's sense of who we are is completely out of date. How did he know that I was the only Jewish person in that threesome? Easily, in the year 2014, I could have been the one person who was not Jewish. There's no way to look at three people on a street in Manhattan or Newton and start guessing who's Jewish. You can't do that by the name. You can't do it by the kunam. You simply can't do that. And remember, not only was this Chabad rabbi out of date with his sense of who we are, many of us have a very narrow and limited sense of who we are. So 50 years into TBA and 140 years into the Reform movement's history, we've got to change how we understand who we are. We are of all different ethnicities, all different backgrounds, all roads of choice and discovery that bring us to be the people we are. We need to first think differently about who we are, and then we have to act differently if we want to bring Jewish strength. Just so you didn't think I was kidding about loving Chabad, Rabbi Krinsky sent me shalach manos. Right? You know, shalach manos we give before Purim. So I come home, there's this huge box in front of my front door. I mean, wrapped box. And I open it up, and it's from Rabbi Krinsky. He said, Chag Purim Sameach. It's a beautiful, beautiful gesture. And that's been a gesture that has been reciprocated. So we have a bigger circle to find our way into Jewish new thinking and new practice, and the possibilities are overwhelmingly positive. So we got 3 big challenges. I want to lay them out. I want to give a couple of examples. And then I want to highlight you. Because, again, we can travel all over North America. There's a whole lot going on here at Temple Beth Avodah that is, frankly, a beacon for other congregations. You already know that because you love this place. And you love your rabbinic leaders. And you love the phenomenal music. Todd, you are unbelievable. But every week you are here. And I saw the way you brought those teams in. God has blessed you with incredible leadership. The 3 challenges. First challenge is going to be, how do we engage the next generation? First of all, why don't we let them sing in the choir? Why don't we let them teach in our school? Why don't we bring them into helping us, Margie, think about the what, right? Because we haven't figured this out, and then we just have to press download into your minds. You have to help us figure out the way in which Jewish life is going to be. The story of David and Avihu, who are they? They're in some ways the first teens, 20s who take on Jewish leadership. The story is probably saying, be careful of giving over the reins to young people. How wrong could that advice be? Give the reins over. What we have figured out in Jewish life, we have figured out. What the next chapter will be, you will figure that out. And we've got to count on you. The Reform movement is at a place of strength and honesty. We're trying to retool and connect everything that happens with youth, right? So the story of Jacob's Camp is a wonderful story of Reform camping. Did you know that we will have, in the course of the next 6 months, 3 phenomenal overnight camps right near where we are? First camp that's in the Northeast with the Reform movement. Give me the name. Camp Eisner Camp, which has been around, thank God, for decades. Phenomenal incubator of Jewish commitment and learning and experience. We got another camp just near to Eisner called Crane Lake, and we are opening the 14th URJ summer camp just north of Boston this summer, and it is, I knew that's why I came. It's the camp, the 6 Points Camp for Science and Technology. There hasn't been a Reform camp, I'm going to frankly say, there hasn't been too many Jewish camps focused on science and technology. In fact, if you love science and technology, you probably don't want to go to camp. They'll make you play soccer, make lanyards. I don't want to do that. I want to work on nuclear physics. I want to design a new app. So we have created this new incubator camp, the Foundation for Jewish Camp, to give more young people opportunities to connect deeply. We've lowered the age of NIFTY, not just to 9th grade, but to 6th grade, so that we can keep those young people. I know it doesn't happen here at Beth Avodah, but in our movement, 80% of the young people who celebrate Bar Bat Mitzvah, by the time they get to Ein Keloheinu, they're already kind of moving towards the door. The end of their Bar Bat Mitzvah service, they're already heading to the door. And they're basically saying, Rabbis, I have enjoyed the study, the tutoring, and I wish you all well. But now I have to get on with my life. At 13, 80% by the time they're in 12th grade have disappeared from Jewish life. That is not the recipe for engaging the generation that we need. And what you're doing here with Midrashah, what you're doing here with rethinking, reimagining, tying informal to formal, camp to congregation, youth group to Israel, all those ways in which we tie it together will allow us to not just engage some, but to engage most. There are 500,000 Jewish teens in North America, and currently we are touching only a few. That's not the way we're going to engage the next generation. So last Friday I was in Milwaukee, and I walked into, nothing wrong with Milwaukee, right? Thank you. I walk into Starbucks because, long days, gotta get a little extra oomph there. So I walk into Starbucks and I'm waiting for my coffee, and all of a sudden I look over, there are 8 girls sitting at a table talking about Esther and Mordecai and the Megillah. Can you imagine 16 and 17-year-olds sitting in Starbucks in Milwaukee talking about the Megillah? I said to the nice one at Starbucks, hold my coffee for a minute. I just got enough caffeine from this conversation. So I walk over, I say to these girls, I say, excuse me, who are you? They looked at me and said, first, who are you? I said, fair enough, fair enough. I said, I'm a rabbi visiting, and I heard the sound of teenagers talking about the Megillah, and my heart started to sing. So who are you? Where are you from? And they tell me they're all from different Reformed synagogues. And I'm starting to my heart is just beating out of my body. And I said, well, where are you going to do this? You're clearly preparing a spiel for Purim. Where are you going to do it? And they said, well, we're actually leading the spiel at BBYO this weekend. I know, I'm looking at some faces going, darn, why not at Nifty? Why not at the Reformed Synagogue? And you know what? That response, which again, I'll own that was initially my response, is the wrong response. I had just been at the international convention of BYO, and this one girl says, weren't you that guy in the opening plenary? Did you say a few words? I said, yeah. She said, well, if you're the head of the Reform movement, what are you doing at BYO? I said, trying to strengthen Jewish life. If you take all the kids in BBYO, all the kids in Nifty, it adds up to 3.5% of Jewish teens in North America. 3.5 together. So we've got a lot more work to do, and we need partners. BBYO is our partner. United Synagogue is our partner. Young Judea is our partner. Anyone bringing strength to the Jewish community is our partner as we continue to grow and do our sacred work with even more strength. You're 50 years old. The second key thing for us in the 21st century is we have got to catalyze congregational change and excellence. Now, when this congregation was created, people were joining synagogues because every American, that's what you did. After World War II, synagogues and churches opened up all over America, and people joined. It's what Americans did. You didn't even need to run an open new members picnic or barbecue. People knocked on your door and came in. 21st century, they stopped knocking. We got to figure out how to go out and find and connect people where they are. Right now, there are more Jews outside the walls of our synagogues than inside. So if we just feel good here, inside TBA tonight, and don't think about who are all the people who may live in our community who either don't know we're here or don't feel a part of this, we've got to make sure we've got the excellence at every part of our synagogue's life. We got to figure out how to bring that creativity. You have an amazing early childhood center. They are unique opportunities to connect young families to Jewish life, to bring people into Jewish choices, and to think about having a Jewish home. And that's part of congregational excellence. So the way in which we can do that can bring power. Rabbi David Stearns, the rabbi of Congregation Emmanuel in Dallas, Texas, he told a story a couple of weeks ago at a regional gathering. He said a woman who had been a member of our synagogue for 30 years resigned. And I was stunned because she came to everything. I mean every service, every class, every sisterhood luncheon, every food for the homeless, every single thing our synagogue did, this woman came. So I called her up. I said, I understand that you've resigned from our temple. You must give me an hour to listen to your story as to why. She said, Rabbi Stern, I loved the classes. I loved the services. I loved the rummage. I loved it all. And in 30 years, I met no one. It's an incredible wake-up call. There was busyness and thoughtfulness in every corner of that synagogue. But there wasn't a sense of deep connectedness. There wasn't open-heartedness. And there weren't those deeper ties forged. Catalyzing congregational changes means we've got to dig deeply. And you've got leaders who can help us dig deeply. And in that, connect to one another. And in that, create a magnet that others would be drawn close. Our movement is bringing communities of practice, communities that want to do work in youth engagement or in Israel engagement or any of the core areas of Jewish life. coming up with new models of membership and views, and bring that excellence that we can then share with others. We have to be the innovators of the 21st century to make sure that those of us who love Judaism don't become the blockbusters of the Jewish world. The third priority, by the way, what were the first two? Because I'll just feel so good as a rabbi if I go home and people can hold on to a thought. What were either of the first two things that I mentioned? And again, it also reminds me, in case I forgot a little bit too. Who will just tell me, what were either of the two first things I mentioned?
Join Netflix.
Exactly right, exactly right. By the way, there's a Zen Judas wisdom figure, right? Join Netflix, that's the key. In addition, what else?
Engage our children.
Engage the next generation, excellent. That's
Don't
the
be
third.
blockbusters.
Don't be blockbusters, thank you. What else?
Connect to each other.
Connect to each other, catalyze congregational change so that congregations can pray as you did tonight. Make that the norm in our reform movement. I can assure you, more people will be inside our walls. Bring that excellence. The third one is to expand our reach beyond the walls of synagogues and not just feel good and great that we're here, but have a sense of mission and commitment to those who aren't yet in. And by the way, some of those who aren't in would if they knew what we were about, knew what we stood for, knew what we were able to bring to one another. The biggest group outside the walls of our synagogue are people who share their home and their love with someone from another faith. So I was on an airplane coming from the West Coast to the East Coast. When you fly a lot, there's a rule of thumb. You don't start talking, make small talk with people next to you, because you'll be set for 6 hours talking. So I got out my laptop and my books, and I was ready to just use 5.5 hours for prep time. And the nice gentleman sitting next to me looked at my book bag, and he saw my name tag, and he said, "Are you a rabbi?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, I want to tell you something." So I took a deep breath, and he said, "Rabbi, I married the most wonderful woman who's not Jewish. And we have the most beautiful baby girl. And I called the synagogue where I grew up, where my dad was once the president, where my grandpa was once the president." I look at him, he's got a tear already coming down his eye. He says, "I couldn't get past the receptions. I wanted somebody to bless our baby girl." At this point, the man is sobbing. I said, "Where do you live?" He said, "Manhattan." I said, "It's a big place." "Where?" "In Manhattan." Tells me on the Upper East Side. I said, "Where?" Tells me the street. He said, "You live within 5 blocks of 5 phenomenal Reformed congregations. It turns out I'm speaking in one of them this Friday night. I would love it if you would come with your wife and your baby girl so we could give you a proper welcome into the Jewish community." I tell you that story because some of the people outside would love to be inside, but they don't know that we need and want them in. Now, you in Boston, you guys have been doing it right. More than any other community in North America. You got a guy at CJP. Do you know his name? Barry Schrade? Barry Schrade is this modern Orthodox guy. He's got a very high, squeaky voice. I love Barry. And 5 minutes after I got this job, Barry came down, sat down next to my office and said, "Rick, you, the Reform movement, dropped the ball. Alexander Schindler, blessed memory, created outreach to interfaith families. Alex said, don't do this, do this. Bring them close." But along the way, we thought we accomplished that task. But the opportunity right now to bring interfaith families into our midst is an unbelievable gift that will bring strength and vitality to our Jewish community if we do it with all of our hearts. Do you know that in Boston, the number of interfaith families raising Jewish children is twice the North American average? Do you know that? Something happens when a community says, we will make this a priority. That's not everywhere the case. So you are a beacon. You're a beacon of strength, a beacon of vision, a beacon of possibility. Last thing I want to say is expanding our reach beyond the walls allows us to be part of something larger than just our local community. You're part of an unbelievable reform movement. Now, says the Pew study, the largest movement in Jewish life. Do you know how large we are? Larger than the conservative, the Orthodox, and the Reconstructionist movements combined. Okay. We are at a moment where we should be feeling that unbelievable strength. But we're not just part of a reform movement. We're part of the Jewish people, past, present, and future. And we are all around the world, and we are particularly tied to the state of Israel. Last June, I had the privilege to sit with Prime Minister Netanyahu. Had the opportunity to sit at that same meeting with Natan Sharansky, who heads the Jewish Agency. Natan was charged with a solution to pluralistic prayer at the Western Wall. Put your hand up if you've been to the Western Wall in Jerusalem. You've been, put your hands down, you've been, you know that as you come into that space, there's a place for women, a place for men, and to do what we did here tonight would be forbidden. We couldn't ask Todd to take his guitar, we couldn't sing, we couldn't be men and women together. And God bless it, the Orthodox have a place at the holiest site in Judaism, but where's our place? And Anat Hoffman, who a year and a half ago had the audacity to pray with a prayer shawl and to pray Hebrew out loud, and she was put in jail. Can you imagine? She was put in jail for doing what we did tonight. And the Prime Minister asked Netanyahu, he said, fix it. We cannot in the Jewish state arrest non-Orthodox Jews for being Jews. And Sharansky went around the world imagining this whole incredible idea to create an extension of the Western Wall that would be pluralistic and egalitarian. A lot of people doubted whether Netanyahu meant what he said. So I sat in his office. I had two asks. First ask, I said, Mr. Prime Minister, would you address our biennial in San Diego? I said, we are the largest movement. We love Israel. We stand up for Israel every day. And we would be honored to have you address us. And I would be honored for you to meet our movement because we have such strength. He said, Rick, I will address the biennial. I hope it will be in person, but if I can't do it in person, because he said this job is sometimes complicated. I said, I thought I had a hard job. No way, you have a hard job. If I can't, I will address you in a live broadcast from Jerusalem. And they said, which he did. My second ask was, Mr. Prime Minister, a lot of us are very impressed that you're committed to make sure that the Western Wall is a place for everybody. Are you really going to make sure that happens? It's going to cost you politically. It's going to cost you perhaps in popularity. It's going to cost you in all kinds of ways. Are you committed? Because I have a lot of people back in North America who think when push comes to shove, once again, the Israeli government won't stand for a Jewish state that has a place for every expression of Judaism. He said, I am committed to see that through. We've been fighting long and hard. We're not done. We're coming close. And that space is going to be, I can feel it. I can feel it with the commitment that all of you bring. This past week, we had a conversion bill that almost passed. It was going to put a big roadblock for non-Orthodox conversions. And we got on the horn with the Prime Minister's office and the ambassador in Washington and said, you cannot disrespect the great majority of Jews in the world. And we are that great majority because we love and want to stay in deep partnership. Conversion bill has been deferred to May. We hope it'll be straightened out. We have a way to express. The last story is a story about the state of Israel. I was there as the rockets were flying from Gaza, literally thousands of them. I went with a group of Jewish leaders Thanksgiving last year, and we went to do Bikur Cholim, to visit the sick in Beersheba. Walked into ICU, and they said, we can't all go in. They said, pick 3 people. So Rabbi Steve Weil is the rabbi at the OU, the Orthodox Union. Rabbi Steve Wernick is the head of the United Synagogue. And I went in on behalf of the Reform Group. 3 of us went in. was a 19-year-old Golani soldier with a huge contraption around his leg. And his mom had baked, Keith Stern proportions of baked goods all around the room. They, of course, wanted to feed us rugla and all kinds of different things. And we said Misha Barak for his healing, and we were being whisked out about ICU. As we were walking out, I looked through one of the curtains, and there was a man lying on the bed with a similar contraption around his leg. Looked like he was from Thailand. I asked the head nurse, what's the story with this gentleman? She said, well, it's interesting. He has the same injury as the Golani soldier. He was working on his moshav next to the Gaza Strip, and a rocket landed next to his tractor and exploded, and he's had 3 surgeries now to repair his leg. I said, has he had any visitors? Come to think of it, he hasn't had any visitors. He's from Thailand. He's a foreign worker. I said, well, rabbis, just a moment. We have another member of our family who needs prayer. We're part of the Jewish people. We're part of all of God's children. We said that Misha Barak didn't know if the Hebrew or the English was understandable, but the gesture of love and prayer was. We're part of something unbelievably powerful. Our expression of Reformed Judaism is so filled with depth and innovation that we have the ability to bring blessing as well as to receive blessing. And that's what we're here to do. When someone says, what did that guy talk about? Well, he told these stories about Keith Stern, about the Baal Shem Tov, Yehuda Amichai, and some other things. I want you to just know in one sentence what the work is for the next 50 years of TBA, what the next work is for the Reform movement. Our job is to grow our movement. We need to be bigger. I don't mean bigger for the sake of being bigger. I mean we need to include the people who want and need to be a part of this Jewish community. But if we just grow wider and more numerous and we don't grow deeper in our commitment, in our understanding, in our practice, it won't matter that we're more. So we're going to grow bigger and deeper at the same time. I don't know if I'm going to have the opportunity to be here for your 75th and for your 100th and for your 150th. I can tell you one thing, that the spirit that you have, let it grow. Let it deepen each of your lives. Let it be overflowing into the community. Let it radiate and inspire others. Let others find their way in over and over again. And let's see if we can't take this spark, this incredible fire that is the core of a religious life. And let's literally grow it into a creation that God would recognize. I am honored to be here. I'm thrilled to celebrate with you on this 50th anniversary, and I'm counting on you to be part of the journey ahead. And I'm counting on you, Rabbi Stern, Rabbi Isaac. I'm counting on you, Ellen. I'm counting on you, Todd, Susan, and Noah. How does he know that guy's name? Because I got to meet him before, and I see the kind of, I'm counting on all of you to bring blessing and to spread the word, to be innovators and lovers.